Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the astrology report for the month of August, outlining some of the key themes and aspects that will be taking place during the course of August, and giving an overview of what kind of themes we can expect to unfold and potential lessons for us to be learning at this time. But as I've said on all the other astrology videos, the astrology itself doesn't control our lives. It's merely a set of influences that, if we understand what kind of lessons they're highlighting to us, if we understand what the energies around us are doing, and we have that contextual awareness of the greater picture, then when different situations are unfolding around us, we can respond to them rather than reacting, because we hold that bigger picture in mind. Now, in terms of August, start off with the Sun. The Sun is in Leo to begin with and will be there up until the 23rd of the month. So this is a time of focusing on self-expression and being our authentic self. But the Sun's passage through a sign often brings up the insecurities in that sign as well. So things to also look out for in the sign of Leo, things like jealousy, insecurities around love. So do we struggle to receive love? Do we struggle to give love? Do we want to be the centre of attention all the time, or conversely do we fear the limelight, so we try and hide who we are? And where do we try to control other people in order to get what we want? At the other end though, we're also looking at how can we develop greater reserves of qualities like generosity, emotional warmth, mercy towards one another, and seeking to improve each other's lives through shining our own light and encouraging one another to shine as we are, and supporting one another in terms of creative endeavours and encouraging one another to embrace our own creative spark and to embrace play, just have fun from time to time. It's because the thing is, Leo is all about that playful nature. It's that side that allows creativity to flourish. It's a side that allows us to tap into that creative spark and turn it into a flame of creativity, and that flame also creates emotional warmth. And when we feel secure within ourselves, generosity comes naturally. We don't think about the whole attitude of what's in it for me. If we see someone who needs a bit of help or something, then we gladly share our warmth, or we share our generosity with one another. And ultimately it's kind of tapping into the more noble qualities of humanity. So Leo does have strong leadership potentials, but ultimately leadership should be not about the elevation of the self. It's about creating things that will benefit the wider whole. So it's how can we help other people become the best versions of themselves. Obviously, for that to be possible, we have to know who we are to begin with, and we have to work on ourselves. And the more we can, and the key area or key thing to work on in this is the giving and receiving of love. So with Leo, for it to operate as healthy self, we need to be able to receive love of other people. We need to be able to take ourselves lightly, so we don't have this overinflated sense of self. We don't take ourselves too seriously, and we just enjoy life. And when people freely give love to us, it's learning to be able to freely receive it and then freely give that love back. So it's moving beyond the dynamic of give and take and more towards giving and receiving. Because if someone's freely giving love to you, or anything else for that matter, then we're happy to receive it. Usually this often generates a desire to kind of give back. This is a kind of generosity cycle where we receive something that we need, and in turn we feel desire to give something back that will help the other person. So it's achieving that kind of mutuality in our dynamics with one another. But the most important is about that having that emotional warmth and generosity of being, and seeking to help and uplift people. So being that warm, playful presence that just lifts the mood, that helps other people. But we have to do that in our own lives first. If we can't do it for ourselves, how can we expect anyone else to do it? Then on the 23rd, the Sun will move into Virgo. So Virgo is more about developing humility. It's about seeing ourselves, or being honest with ourselves about our imperfections. But the most important thing to remember with the Sun in Virgo is that whenever we do encounter our own imperfection or our own flaws, it's important that we use unconditional self-acceptance. So we don't judge ourselves, or we don't criticize ourselves for these perceived flaws. It's only by accepting these imperfections that we can actually transform them and convert weaknesses into strengths. And Virgo is also about health. So it deals with daily routines, but it also deals with our physical and mental health. So what routines do we pursue in life? So by this I mean, do the routines that we live out on a daily basis, or do the habits support us and keep us strong, or are they actually undermining us? Do we have a habit of criticising ourselves relentlessly whenever we make a mistake? Or do we have a tendency to be gentle on ourselves, to take on board any feedback or lesson that we can gain from what's ever happened, and remain open and humble to any feedback so that we become better versions of ourselves? Virgo is also about taking the raw creative impulse of Leo and really refining it and turning it into a skill. So Virgo is the sign that specialises in the will to commit to doing something and actually get good at it. So it's all about that personal refinement. But the main thing we need to be wary with Virgo is a tendency towards criticism and perfectionism, because the perfectionism is an aspect that the ego is pursuing, but the ego can never be perfect because it is ultimately an illusion. So whenever we experience perfectionist tendencies coming up, we need to take a moment, step back and observe this tendency and to question it. Is the idea of perfection that the ego is pushing realistic, or is it actually just causing us suffering because we're telling ourselves we're not good enough when actually we may well be? We didn't have all the facts, for example, so we haven't done things as best as we could have potentially done. But as long as we always take the opportunity to learn and become better at something, then it's not really a failure. It's just something didn't go quite as we intended it to. We've realised where we attended things in the wrong way, and we adjust things accordingly. So we learn from it, we become wiser, and become more skillful at what we're doing. So part of the trick with Virgo is almost embracing mistakes, embracing the imperfections, and going easy on ourselves. Virgo is also about humble service, so it's about helping other people. But we're not really going to be able to do that if we're stuck constantly criticising ourselves. So part of it is learn to relax, go easy on ourselves, and become increasingly humble. And Virgo is also like the descent of spirit into matter. It's how do we convert daily activities into some kind of spiritual service? How can we become compassion in action? So obviously I'll do much more about this in a separate video dedicated to the Sun's trans through Virgo. These are all things to think about close to the time. Now we've got a lot of other things going on in August, because August is very much a month of change. It's about transformation and it's reviewing things and seeing where do we need to be doing things differently, where have we been pursuing things in the wrong kind of way, and how do we need to change things in that respect. So the first key date will be the 6th. This is when Lilith moves out of Capricorn, where she's been for about 10 months, and into Aquarius, where she'll spend the next 10 months. And in Aquarius, we're looking at Lilith tends to exaggerate anything that's been repressed. So here we could find old desires or exaggerated desires for freedom coming up, and desire to exhibit our uniqueness. But obviously everyone in the world is unique in their own way, so in that respect we're no more special than anyone else. But it's also looking at where we have a fear of commitment, where do we have an exaggerated fear that committing to something will undermine our freedom. But at its best, it's also about embracing freedom and the wisdom of Aquarius is a very future oriented sign, so Lilith here can exaggerate the need to create the future in the now. So identifying the key vision that we want to manifest and then taking the steps necessary to get there. But with Aquarius being such a future-oriented sign, when we do achieve the goal that we've set, it's learning to appreciate that we've achieved that and we don't just dismiss it. The next event will be the following day on the 7th. This is Uranus turning retrograde. It'll be in Taurus initially, but later in the year will make its final pass of Aries retrograde before leaving Aries altogether, where it won't return for about almost 77 years. So with Uranus retrograde, Uranus is all about trying to awaken us to the deeper levels of who we are, or to try and make it clear to us that we are more than we believe we are. So with Uranus in Taurus, Taurus specialises in survival. It's about physical survival and developing the resources necessary to help us to survive on Earth and to develop the resources that we need in order to build and grow. So with Uranus going through Taurus, what we may be looking at is reflecting on or seeing where do we actually have skills or abilities that we haven't tapped into. Where can we create new resources through transforming the way we see what we already have? How can we achieve greater results with less? Because we've seen the effects of rampant materialism, and it's causing destruction on a wide scale basis. It's polluting the oceans, it's damaging the forests. So where can we transform our understanding of resources? How can we bring up resources from within ourselves so that we can achieve the same or develop new resources that will empower us? But crucially, Uranus is about the collective, so it's about awakening us to our connection with the whole of humanity. So it's how do we develop a more humanitarian approach to utilising resources? So how can we create new resources that won't cause a negative impact on communities further afield? And where can we understand transform our value system so that our values are based less on material resources or material world and based more on spiritual values? So how do we approach our pursuit of resources on a higher level of understanding? The next event will be a grand sextile in the sky. This is on the 9th. In some places it will be on the early hours of the 8th, so this is more like America, but over here in the UK it'll be present for most of the 9th of August. And with a grand sextile, we're talking about 6 planets that are 60 degrees apart and form trines for one another, which makes a six-pointed star formation. And the six-pointed star formation has a strong sacred geometry component to it. This kind of formation brings in high-level energies for us to connect with, and considering where some of us may have fallen down in the past few months, where we've not been pursuing the best course, or we think we've known what we should be doing and we've fallen flat for whatever reason, this eclipse, or this formation before the solar eclipse, gives us an opportunity to kind of reset, to allow a new idea to come through that is more aligned with who we are. And it's a time for renewal, if you like. It's a chance for us to shed any karma that we've created for ourselves and to allow a new vision or a higher level of understanding to permeate our being, while shedding the more base level of our nature at the same time. Before this, we have the solar eclipse 2 days later. This solar eclipse will be the last one in the Leo Aquarius axis, because later in the year the nodes will be changing. So the North Node will move out of Leo into Cancer, and the South Node will move out of Aquarius into Capricorn. So with this eclipse, this is all about highlighting the lesson of being who we are, of lighting the loads or helping to lighten the load of others who play, and sharing emotional warmth with one another. But obviously this requires that we be able to connect with that emotional warmth in the first place. So for some of us, we may find that we're in a position to help other people learn how to embrace play better, to not take ourselves so seriously, to just lighten the load. So by having that light-hearted nature and encouraging other people to embrace that side of themselves, it's spreading a more playful nature. But with North Node in Leo, it's also highlighted the fact that if we want group consciousness symbolised by Aries to transform and elevate, then it's the responsibility of each individual to become the best version of ourselves. So with Leo, it's about, well, North Node in Leo, in this particular eclipse, it's moving out of the head and into the heart. How can we become more loving individuals? How can we be more supportive? How can we encourage other people to be creative? And where do we need to address our own issues with giving and receiving love? Where do we fear unconditional love given to us to the point where we reject it and keep ourselves cut off from love? Because love is a fundamental need of every single one of us, but for whatever reason, many of us are conditioned to fear unconditional love because we're used to the more conditional kind. So when someone does give us unconditional love, for whatever reason, we distrust it, even though unconditional love is what will ultimately heal us. So I'll do another video on this in much more detail because there's far too much going on to go through every single thing. But the crux of the solar eclipse will be about, for some of us, radiating unconditional love and encouraging people to open up to it, but obviously not trying to force people. Each person has to get to that place where they can receive unconditional love. And if we're in a position where we don't know how to give that unconditional love, then this is a time for us to learn how to receive it, to learn to love ourselves, and to the point where we don't need validation of other people. We're completely comfortable within our own skin, we're able to be our authentic selves and encourage other people to do the same. But it requires that we do the work. We can't expect other people to do it if we're not prepared, we're not willing to make the effort ourselves. The next date will be the 19th. This is when Mercury turns direct again. So for the first half of August, Mercury's going to be retrograde. So it's not really time for implying new insights or trying to do anything new at this stage. It's more about reflecting on what creative projects should we really be working on, what is our relationship with creativity, what is our relationship with play, and where do we need to reevaluate how we utilise our creative energies so that we're not creating things which will ultimately cause harm or creating things which will undermine us. It's learning how to use the creative energy wisely, to recognise that creative energy isn't actually our own. It's the divine creative force flowing through us, and therefore we have a responsibility to make sure that what we're creating will empower ourselves, empower people around us. The next event is the 23rd, which I've already gone to. That's the sun in Virgo. But 3 days later, on the 26th, we'll have a full moon in Pisces. So this brings about the need to balance Virgo's discerning side, or the practical discerning nature of Virgo, with the more spiritual side of Pisces. So Pisces is about spiritual health, Virgo is about physical and mental. So when we bring the two together and balance them, we have that holistic health of body, mind and spirit. And with Pisces, it helps us to connect with that universal consciousness, connect with that universal compassion, empathy and psychic sensitivity. And through Virgo, that creates that channel for us to convert those feelings into service. But for us to do that, we need to be connected with that universal consciousness to begin with. We need to connect with that unconditional love, that empathy, compassion for one another, and then use that to help to convert feelings of compassion into actions. So I'll go into more detail again on a separate video for this, but it's all about using the compassion of Pisces to kind of counter any tendencies towards the more critical side of Virgo. It's using that compassion to keep us humble, to stop us from denigrating ourselves or undermining ourselves, and to feel comfortable with it in being who we are and able to channel unconditional love through acts of service that will help other people in ways that will not cultivate any kind of dependency. It empowers that other person in a practical way, Because if we're doing stuff that's going to create dependency, we're not actually helping other people, we're holding them back or keeping them in a holding pattern. So it's only by maintaining boundaries and only giving the kind of help that will actually help someone without cultivating dependency, it's only that kind of service that we should really be looking to give to other people. And the last event is a day after, this is 27th, Mars turns direct. So whatever insights we've learned from Mars retrograde, so our relationship with or the actions that we're taking, our relationship with assertiveness, so are we comfortable asserting who we are and maintaining boundaries where appropriate, and do our actions, because Mars will be moving backwards into Capricorn on the 13th, so the last few days of the retrograde we'll spend in Capricorn whilst the bulk of it's been Aquarius. So in Capricorn we're looking at making sure that the actions and desires that we pursue are aligned with who we are. So whatever we've learned during Mars retrograde, this is a time to apply it. If we don't actually apply the insights into our lives and learn and embody them, then we haven't actually learned anything, because it's only through embodying the lessons that we've learned that they're actually applied and we can move on, so we don't have to repeat that lesson at a later date. So the more we apply the lessons that we've learned during the Mars retrograde and the more comfortable we are with asserting ourselves, then the more empowered we are going forward, because we're being true to who we are, we're asserting ourselves when necessary, but we're not exploding on other people, unleashing anger. It's the ability to remain calm and objective and to assert the boundaries where need be and make it clear what we will accept and what we won't accept from other people, but obviously making sure it's delivered in a loving kind of way. So there's a lot to take on board for the month of August, but if there's anything to take away, this is a month where we need to become or get back in touch with who we are. We need to let go of any desires or actions that are no longer appropriate for who we are. We need to, if there's any projects that have fallen flat, or for any actions that we've been taking which are causing karma, this is a month to reflect on the impact of that and to go through a reset. So we need to now be coming from a place of, or ideally moving to a place where we're more authentic, where we're better able to give and receive love, where we support one another and uplift one another rather than putting each other down, and we learn to embrace play and creativity, and whatever creative impulses or creative skills we develop when the sun moves into Virgo, we then hone them and develop them to a skill that we master, and that can be used as a service to help other people. So the more we learn from this period, with the first half or first 11 days of the month being in the eclipse window, so stuff is coming up, the more we sit with the process, get comfortable with it and don't try to outrun it or don't try to suppress it, the more we allow stuff to come up from the deeper levels of our mind and shed them, the more empowered we become, and the more we embrace change via the Uranus retrograde, and more we allow insights in terms of the deeper capacities or deeper skills we have, the more we empower ourselves and the more able we are to contribute to the collective whole through recognising that we are each other's brothers and sisters, we are each other's keepers. So therefore we need to make sure that our actions are done in a humanitarian kind of way, and we understand that our actions have consequences. So if we want our individual communities to become stronger, we have to operate from a more community kind of mindset. So there's a lot to take on board, but I hope the month of August brings you many insights, many key lessons and new strengths learnt, and I hope you become much more aware of who you are and feel comfortable expressing that side, to be authentic and to learn to help one another through the giving and receiving of love rather than come from a give or take mindset. Because more, if we freely receive, freely we give, a more empowering dynamic emerges, which unleashes synergy and empowers everyone within the group who's participating in this kind of dynamic. So may August bring you many blessings and a heck of a lot of growth and transformation. Take care and be blessed.